Welcome back to a chapter a day. It is Monday. Happy Labor Day. And we are going to be reading Judges chapter 16. We are going through the book of Judges, and it's all about the different judges, like the name says, that God raised up to lead Israel. Because remember, their major leaders had died off, which were like Moses, Aaron, Joshua, um, some of the priests like Eleazar. They had all died out. So now they have to have leaders because they have been apostatizing, which is getting into idolatry from the other nations around them. So God has raised up judges. So we've had some of them already mentioned, like Deborah. She was a prophetess also. Um, then we had, I believe, Gideon was also considered a judge or just a leader of the people into battle. Then there were some other names mentioned that were not very known. And then we came down to Samson, who is the current judge. And at times, I think Samson was just a bit, I don't want to say misguided, but a bit self-willed. And he got himself entangled with the Philistines, had certain of his own personal battles with them, and then finally the Philistines said, you know what, we had enough. We got to get Samson back. And every time he's finished with the Philistines, he goes back to his people in Israel. Married a woman. They burned the woman's house because of what has happened after Samson gave them a riddle. So on and on it goes with Samson. He's just in with the Philistines and then out again. And then the last chapter we read, they came to get him, and his own people delivered him into the hands of the Philistines. 3,000 men for 1,000 Philistines, because they said Samson took the jawbone of an ass and whooped 1,000 men. So I'm believing it's 1,000 men that came up to 3,000, and they were afraid because they didn't have God with them. So they delivered Samson over to these 1,000 Philistines, and Samson took them out again, so to speak. Okay, now they said Samson judged Israel for 20 years. So let's see what else he did. Chapter 16. Then went Samson to Gaza and saw there an harlot and went in unto her. Mercy. And it was told the Gazites, saying, Samson is come hither. And they compassed him in and laid wait for him all night in the gate of the city, and were quiet all the night, saying, in the morning when it is day, we shall kill him. And Samson lay till midnight, and arose at midnight, and took the doors of the gate of the city, and the two posts, and went away with them, bar and all, and put them upon his shoulders, and carried them up to the top of an hill that is before Hebron. And it came to pass afterward that he loved a woman in the valley of Sorek, whose name was Delilah. And the lords of the Philistines came up unto her and said unto her, entice him, and see wherein his great strength lieth, and by what means we may prevail against him, that we may bind him to afflict him, and we will give thee, every one of us, 1,100 pieces of silver. Whew! Repeating of the past. Again, after one battle with Samson and the Philistines, he goes back to Israel. He remains low key for a while, and then I don't know what raises him up, and he heads back to the Philistines. This time he finds a harlot, goes with the harlot. When he's leaving, he rips off the gate post of the city, takes it with him. The men say, you know what, we had enough of this. We need to get rid of Samson for good. You know, he's very strong, so now we need to find out, where is that strength coming from? So, of course, a woman. There's always that tie in between, always a woman. Samson seems to have another attraction to this woman named Delilah. So the Philistines go to her. The lords of the Philistines go to her, just like they did with his first wife, and tells her, we will pay thee to find out what is the source of his strength and let us know. So let's see what happens. Verse 6. And Delilah said to Samson, tell me, I pray thee, wherein thy great strength lieth, and wherewith thou mightest be bound to afflict thee. And Samson said unto her, if they bind me with 7 green withs that will never dry, then shall I be weak and be as another man. Then the lords of the Philistines brought up to her 7 green withs which had not been dried, and she bound him with them. Now there were men lying in wait, abiding with her in the chamber. And she said unto him, the Philistines be upon thee, Samson. And he brake the withs as a thread of tow is broken when it toucheth the fire. So his strength was not known. And Delilah said unto Samson, behold, thou hast mocked me and told me lies. Now tell me, I pray thee, wherewith thou mightest be bound. Okay, so here's what. The first time, okay, he wasn't expecting it. She asked, and then, all of a sudden these men seem to, whatever he told her is going to be the source of his weakness, but that means taking away of his strength. She gets it. Didn't he see that when he went back? So she gets the dried wits of whatever he told her. She binds Okay. She binds him. Now, I guess maybe they're doing like they're playing games in their marriage or something. Maybe that's how it's happening. Isn't he registering? When the Spirit of God departs from you or begins to depart from you, so does your reasoning. And I would say just your common sense. Because here she is with exactly what you told her before would take away your strength. She somehow gets it, binds you up, and I guess it's all love play, maybe. That's how he was looking at it. Okay, let's keep going. Verse 11, and he said unto her, if they bind me fast with new ropes that never were occupied, then shall I be weak and be as any other man. Delilah therefore took new ropes and bound him therewith, and said unto him, the Philistines be upon thee, Samson. And there were lions in wait abiding in the chamber. And he brake them off from his arms like a thread. And Delilah said unto Samson, hitherto thou hast mocked me and told me lies. Tell me wherewith thou mightest be bound. And he said unto her, if thou weavest the 7 locks of my head with the web. And she fastened it with a pin, and said unto him, the Philistines be upon thee, Samson. And he awaked out of his sleep, and went away with the pin of the beam and with the web. And she said unto him, how canst thou say, I love thee, when thine heart is not with me? Thou hast mocked me these 3 times, and hast not told me wherein thy great strength lieth. Heavy sigh. Is he tracking? Is he tracking what's going on? 3 times now. She asked, he told, he got ambushed. Doesn't he see a setup? Where's his mind? His brain is not functioning. I could tell you it was functioning more than his brain, but anyway. Verse 16. And it came to pass when she pressed him daily with her words and urged him so that his soul was vexed unto death, that he told her all his heart and said unto her, there hath not come a razor upon mine head, for I have been a Nazarite unto God from my mother's womb. If I be shaven, then my strength will go from me, and I shall become weak and be like any other man. And when Delilah saw that he had told her all his heart, she sent and called for the lords of the Philistines, saying, come up this once, for he hath showed me all his heart. Then the lords of the Philistines came up unto her, and brought money in their hand, and she made him sleep upon her knees. And she called for a man, and she caused him to shave off the 7 locks of his head. And she began to afflict him, and his strength went from him. And she said, The Philistines be upon thee, Samson. And he awoke out of his sleep and said, I will go out as at other times before and shake myself. And he wist not that the Lord was departed from him. 3 strikes and he was out. End of the game. And I would say this is how God works with us. We keep playing with sin. We keep playing with sin. We keep playing with sin. God sends us warnings. God sends us warnings. He reasons in our minds. If God is with us, in our hearts and minds, we will know. And I'm telling you this because I experienced something very similar to this. Times and times and times I was warned. You can call it a warning. I knew something that I was doing was wrong, and I kept being warned until finally the Spirit of God let me go, and I just went on and just spiraled into an unsanctified situation that I was fully aware of. Now, I don't know about Samson if he was fully aware or if the Spirit of God was so much not with him already that by the time he told her about his hair, he was just gone. Because 3 times. Verse 21, But the Philistines took him and put out his eyes and brought him down to Gaza and bound him with fetters of brass. And he did grind in the prison house. Howbeit the hair of his head began to grow again after he was shaven. Then the lords of the Philistines gathered them together for to offer a great sacrifice unto Dagon their god, and to rejoice. For they said, Our God hath delivered Samson our enemy into our hand. And when the people saw him, they praised their God, for they said, Our God hath delivered into our hands our enemy, and the destroyer of our country, which slew many of us. So the Philistines are just having a great victory, celebrating, praising their God for delivering Samson into their hands. Verse 25, And it came to pass, when their hearts were merry, that they said, Call for Samson, that he may make us sport. And they called for Samson out of the prison house, and he made them sport, and they set him between the pillars. So if you can picture this, Samson is now blinded. They put out his eyes. They have him in prison. I'm not sure if they are just having him languishing in prison or if they have him working on their behalf in prison. But he's in prison. He's blind. His hair is growing back. That's the little clue right there. What was it the angel said to his mother and to his parents later as to what the instructions were for Samson? She was not supposed to drink wine nor strong drink nor eat unclean foods, and no razor was supposed to come upon his head. No razor was supposed to come upon his head. That means his hair was supposed to grow. Now, people think that the strength of Samson was majorly in his hair. That was the sign that God was with him. That was the sign of a Nazirite vow. You don't, and I don't know if he was drinking strong drink while he was hanging out with these Philistine men and women. Most likely he might have been. I don't know. But little by little, every time he broke a vow, he was getting weaker. He was getting weaker. He may not have noticed it, but he was getting weaker until finally the last straw of him telling about his hair and they cutting it off. That was that's what they say, the straw that broke the camel's back. That was it for him. Verse 26, And Samson said unto the lad that held him by the hand, Suffer me that I may feel the pillars whereupon the house standeth, that I may lean upon them. Now the house was full of men and women, and all the lords of the Philistines were there. And there were upon the roof about 3,000 men and women that beheld, while Samson made sport. And Samson called unto the Lord and said, O Lord God, remember me, I pray thee, and strengthen me, I pray thee. Only this once, O God, that I may be at once avenged of the Philistines for my 2 eyes. Now here's why. His hair is growing back. He is brought to the court where they're celebrating their victory over him, to their God, and they call for him to make fun of him. So he's going to be their sport. Sport means something fun. So they're going to make fun of him while his eyes are out, maybe hit him and slap him and, tell him to do silly things. So they tie him to the post. So I'm picturing this. I don't know if you've ever seen like a circus, if you've been to a tent circus. I'm kind of picturing it like that. There's a major pole that stands in the middle of it. And they tie him there because everyone is around. They can see him in the middle of the tent. His hands are tied. His hair is grown back. And he talks to God. Now, I don't know if Samson was communicating with God while in prison, but he had a vendetta out for the Philistines for his eyes. And he said, you know what? I'm going to get them back right now. With God's help. He didn't have to strengthen him anymore. Like I said, the strength, his hair was not the source of his strength. His hair was a sign that God was with him because of his obedience as far as keeping the Nazirite vows. But God is so merciful. Even though Samson went that far against his commandments, God still honored Samson's wish. So let's see what verse 29 says. And Samson took hold of the 2 middle pillars upon which the house stood, and on which it was borne up, of the one with his right hand, and of the other with his left. And Samson said, let me die with the Philistines. And he bowed himself with all his might, and the house fell upon the lords and upon all the people that were therein. So the dead which he slew at his death were more than they which he slew in his life. Then his brethren and all the house of his father came down and took him and brought him up and buried him between Zorah and Eshtaol in the burying place of Manoah his father. And he judged Israel 20 years. That's the end of chapter 16. So Samson died with the Philistines, but that was his wish to get the Philistines, to kill the Philistines, even if he died with them. Now, I have heard people say Samson committed suicide. I would say this: suicide is an intentional killing of oneself. I guess when other people, like bombers, run into a crowd and kill others, people also say they committed suicide. Their main mission, of course, was to kill the people around them. They died in the process. Yeah? When Jesus came here to offer himself up on a cross, he didn't kill himself, no, but he offered himself. He could have said no, but he allowed himself to be killed. Is that the same? If I say I'm going to be killed instead of someone else, Samson didn't literally take something and kill himself. Samson's aim was to kill the Philistines. God gave him the strength again to bring those poles or those pillars down upon his enemies, and he died with them in the process. And I believe in the New Testament, Samson's name is still mentioned. Is still mentioned as one of God's prophets. So I will leave that alone. Whew, my God is always merciful, even when we do silly things. I mean, blatant, open, silly things. I know, I can tell you more than once. But I'm trying my best not to do that again. God help me. And I pray that you all have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you for listening. And remember, faith comes by the hearing of God's word. Take care. Bye.